Hello everyone and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Joining me, I have a Jer.
Hello.
An Alex.
Hair.
And a Ben.
There are two of me.
That's true. A reminder that North 100 is brought to you by you with your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. Let's start with our opening segment, the best card that you're not playing. And up today we have Jer. Jer, hit us up with something spicy.
All right. You like blue cards, right?
We all do.
You like cantrips?
Love cantrips.
Well, this card is almost a cantrip. It's Careful Study. Now, you're going to say, Jer, we know you play Careful Study in Reanimator.
Yeah, everyone knows,
What
right?
are you talking about? Well, you should just be playing it in almost all your blue decks. That's what I'm saying. People aren't playing it enough.
Really?
That's what I'm saying.
But isn't it card disadvantage?
Yes, if you look at it in a vacuum. But if you look at today's deck, Highlander decks, and how well they're utilizing the graveyard, you're getting a card's worth of advantage out of this often, and especially with the new mulligan rule, just having cards that smooth out your draws, get you to your more powerful cards, fuel your delve spells, which are often game changers. It gets the value back. I've been playing it a lot in Rug Tempo, and it's been one of the best cards in the deck. Just being able to, being blue, it makes it more attractive in the early game than Faithless Looting, just because I play 10 islands and one mountain. So it's just,
For the listeners, what does it do?
Important.
Yes. Nice catch.
It's a single blue sorcery. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. So very simple, very elegant. No flashback, but it's blue.
Yeah, so you're playing this over Faithless Looting specifically because it's blue, and you'd rather you figure you're gonna have blue mana more reliably in the early game.
I'm playing both, but I think Faithless Looting is more powerful, certainly in a vacuum. But I also think people are more onto Faithless Looting because of how prevalent it is in Modern currently, and all the talk about it. It's got the hype. It's not the best card you're not playing. Most people are probably playing it. But I still don't think most people are playing Careful Study. And oftentimes you're not even flashing back Faithless Looting in the course of a Highlander game. Obviously if you are, it's nice to have, but if everything's going well, you don't need to flash it back.
Yeah, I figured that people would be playing something like Opt or Sleight of Hand before they played this.
I mean,
you're often playing both, but in tempo, when you're trying to cut lands, especially with the new mulligan, let me reiterate, just having the huge density of cards to get you through your deck and to get you the cards you need is really important.
being blue is also extremely relevant in a world of Force of Will and Force of Negation and Basic Island being better than ever.
Basic Island better than ever, holy moly. Well, with that, let's shift to today's topic. So the Let's Talk About series is back. Probably one of my favorite recurring episode types that we do. And today, we're going to be talking about disruption.
No.
Today, we're going to be talking about disruption.
No. Okay, I think the joke's done now.
So to start off, a lot of people might be familiar with the term, or maybe are not. But let's get Jer to give us an introductory definition on what is disruption in Magic.
So disruption in Magic is either cards or an overlying strategy in your deck that with the intent of, instead of forwarding your strategy to win the game, you're looking to negate or interrupt your opponent's strategy.
Good job not using the word in the definition. You're like, don't use the word disrupt. Don't use the word disrupt.
I didn't.
Well, let's try and make that a little bit more concrete then. Let's give some examples of types of disruption. So we've got a couple of categories to describe disruption, and one is proactive or reactive disruption. So can somebody give me an example of reactive disruption?
Counterspell.
Are you doing the counterspell hand?
Disrupt.
Yeah, disrupt is very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. And then
I thought we said we weren't going to use the word in the definition.
All right, you're going to have to lose a point there.
I didn't say shun. Although shunt is also, I guess, reactive disruption. There we go.
Oh, no.
Foil?
Ooh.
Don't play foil.
I mean,
I've played foil.
You can play
I've won a tournament with foil.
Don't play thwart.
Can we just get a
I've won a
counterspell?
tournament with thwart.
Can we just get a counterspell called Nope?
Probably in an unset.
Yeah, I cast this. Nope. All right, and then let's talk about proactive. So reactive, a counterspell. Obviously, they cast a spell, you react, you counter the spell. What's a proactive disruption?
Thoughtseizes you.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my
Inquisition,
game plan.
Kozilek, you.
my
Mostly
blood cast?
proactive. Although in our format, I actually think hand attack is less proactive than in some other formats. Just because you're often reacting to tutors you have seen.
Yeah, if you know your matchup, slamming a Thoughtseize on turn 1 isn't always the best thing to do. Instead, wait for them, especially if it's a combo deck. Or even like the mid-range decks, right? If they spend their turn 2 demonic tutoring up like anything from Black Lotus to Life from the Loam, then being able to, discarding a Loam isn't great, but something like a Vanillion Clique on that effect,
Or say
whatever it may be.
you got off to an aggressive start and they DT for Toxic Deluge, then getting to nug the Toxic Deluge is probably way more important than nugging like a random Planeswalker
So
on
in
turn
that
1 or
sense,
something.
reactive plays are not necessarily immediate, as they would be with counter spells.
No,
Sometimes it's like a turn or two later.
well, mostly reactive spells require your opponent to, again, take
with me.
some kind of action for you to then react to.
They have the initiative, and you're trying to.
Yeah,
Right.
The other big category of reactive disruption is removal spells.
Yeah.
Which once again requires your opponent to have something with which to remove.
I need to circle back to this hand attack conversation here.
Okay.
So you're on the play.
Yeah.
You're on a black deck. You have Thoughtseize in hand. You're against another deck, and you don't have any other one drop. You're not leading with hand attack just to see what your opponent kept.
Not always.
Obviously, your opponent has kept a good enough hand that they've got action. They've got gas. Otherwise, they would have mulliganed.
All right, let me paint you a picture.
Please, yeah.
You're playing against Storm. It's game 2. They stormed you game 1 because you didn't have a great hand. Like, you didn't have your Thoughtseize. Game 2, you open up your hand, you see Thoughtseize. You're like, great, I'm gonna get him. You play your black mana, you Thoughtseize them, you see a transmute spell, some cantrips, and
Maybe a tutor or something.
yeah, a tutor and some lands, some mana. What do you take? You probably take the tutor.
Yeah.
But then they're going to transmute for probably the same tutor, and then you're in pretty much the exact same spot. Whereas if you let them transmute for something, maybe they go get more mana, and then you Thoughtseize them, then you can take their last tutor.
You wait for the pirouette before you kick their leg out.
Yes. It's just like cheap spells, especially in Highlander, although you can take this advice to other Magic formats, because they are so cheap and yet so impactful, be it hand attack, card like Lightning Bolt or something like Preordain, so not even Disruption, is that the more information that you have, the better they become. So when you know what your opponent is setting up for with their tutors or with their cantrips, then being able to Thoughtseize something that has importance that they've put resources into.
Because then they're down the tutor and the card.
And also,
Yeah. And
they'll-
a turn.
they'll have likely spent their cantrips by the time you're Thoughtseizing them as well. And then they're cantripping without the knowledge that they're going to be Thoughtseize. Where if you Thoughtseize them on turn 1, then they're cantripping with the knowledge, like they have the perfect information.
But what about the fear that you're going to be too slow? You're against a combo deck. You're against Storm. They could kill you at any time.
No
That's
fear.
mostly unfounded.
Aren't you going to feel dumb if you die with a hand attack in hand?
You're going to feel dumber if you use your spells improperly and then lose because of it.
But like, you might feel dumb, but you're likely you're taking the higher percentage play. Like if you die with a hand attack spell in hand, that means their hand was very good, and it means if you Thoughtseize them early, there's a reasonable chance you were going to lose the game anyways.
Listen here, Surgeon Jägermeister.
That's what they call me.
Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings oblivion or annihilation, and the rest of it.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's talk about some other types of disruption here. We have ones that are single use, and then we have static effects. So we've been talking a lot about hand attack. That's a great example of single use. What is an example of static disruption?
Idiot bird. Aven Mind Sensor.
Stupid bird.
So talk about
Aven
Aven. What
Mind
is
Sensor.
Aven Mind Sensor?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Serge.
Stupid bird wizard.
It's 2 and a white
Caw-caw.
for a 2/1 flying flash Idiot Bird Wizard. It says, if an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards instead of that library. So it's not as if you need to play this card and then you get this one instance of, haha, your next shuffle does this, or whatever it may be. This card can just sit around and impact decisions of your opponents, or, not even give them the decision because they can't do anything. They can't tutor for their lands.
I want to touch on 2 other types of disruption and kind of where they fit in. We've got land mana denial, like LD. Where does that fit in this conversation?
It's basically proactive.
Yeah.
You can, again, much like how other proactive disruption spells like discard can be used to react once they play a key land. The same way you can hold your wasteland for their Caracas or their Inventor's Fair, Tolarian Academy, whatever it may be. But also the default mode is
Get them. As Patrick Sullivan would say.
Yeah.
Get them.
Just
Get them.
Just the elbow drop. And then finally, another very common, well, maybe less so, but a common form of disruption is tax, making things more expensive.
Right. Taxation is a very, it ties into basically everything just a little bit. It's mostly static effect, so through something like Thalia.
Yeah.
2-mana Thalia or Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale.
Golem.
Big loads.
Oh, yeah.
Trinisphere.
Yeah.
Like that sort of effect where you'll have the ones attached to creatures where, again, the strength of these cards come from the fact that they are also creatures. But then if you're going really ham on taxation, you're going to start to find cards that are more reactive where they get a lot of their worth once your opponent has built up resources. So whereas stuff like Lodestone, Thalia, Trinisphere are at their best when you play them before your opponent gets a chance to, do
their
anything.
thing. Yeah.
Cards like Pendrell Mists or Tabernacle.
That's how you pronounce it.
The Abyss. Those kind of things. Right? Drop of Honey.
Nether
You
Void?
want to, for those at home that aren't familiar with all these cards, they're a bunch of really expensive, old, bad, but extremely cool cards that the people at this table probably play more than they should.
Yeah.
Don't look at me.
No, I mean, look. Anyways, it's taxation, right? It's all limiting what your opponent can do.
So I think we've got a pretty good idea of what disruption is, especially in the format, the different ways you can use it. Why? Why are people running disruption? When is it best used?
Well, it's often used to be able to interact in matchups where your opponent's deck is faster than yours, or your opponent's long game plan is better than yours, or and some disruption spells are just powerful and efficient enough on their own that they just fit into like a good stuff strategy. Like Thoughtseize is a powerful 1-for-1 card because it's cheap and very good at disrupting your opponent, and the cost of including it in your deck is very low. Like people don't really play trying to think of a really bad hand attack spell.
Blackmail.
Myers Toll.
Myers Toll.
See, I can't even name.
Because
wait, what's Myers Toll?
I can only name
also-
this because I played it.
It's also cheap, but it's not good.
So Myers Toll, 1-mana black sorcery. Target player reveals a number of cards from their hand equal to the number of swamps you control. You choose one, they discard it.
Yeah, not one of my finer moments playing this card.
What did you play this in?
Pox. Mono black Pox.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Because you needed every single hand attack possible?
Everyone.
And it hits base. It hits lands.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
basically. I mean, that's the same reason you play
Blackmail.
Blackmail.
Yeah.
Because it's this card only sort of.
Better.
It's the same reason you play Encroach. We're just going to
No,
keep
you
naming
don't
all
play.
these.
Nobody plays Encroach. Only idiots play Encroach.
I mean, I played
I've
Encroach
played
in the
Encroach.
Myers Toll deck.
I like that the deck has now been named the
I'm
Myers.
sorry. The most winningest player in the format's history is an idiot. Oh, I'm an idiot, huh? That's it. I'm going to take my Drop of Honey. I'm going to take my Tabernacle. and I'm going to leave right now.
Can we just circle back to the fact that Wheeler referred to himself as the most winningest player in the history of the format?
Statistically speaking, it's
true.
accurate.
Is it?
Yeah.
How many losses did you have to take to get that?
Oh, I lose a lot.
I know.
Technically correct is still correct.
Hell yeah. What were you talking about? Bad discard?
Yeah. We're talking about when is disruption best used?
Disruption is like core to what Magic the Gathering is. Without it,
We're playing Hearthstone.
well, even worse than that. It's just this, like, see who. It's literally a game of who can count faster than the other person.
Yeah.
Right. It's just I'm looking.
Bear, Grey Ogre, Wind Elemental.
It's just all numbers without disruption. It's all numbers that are placed on the table that are more or less public information, which is boring. That's boring. Quit boring, everyone. Disruption adds this element of, well, interaction, right? You force people to care about your own cards, right? Which even the most straightforward combo deck that has no disruption plays disruption, even if it can double up for like adding on to their combo plan. So it's so, I mean, it's from like alpha, right? First set. It's so weaved into the fabric of the game.
And building on what Ben just said is that even some combo deck, like the fastest of fast combo decks, have some amount of disruption. It's just incidental disruption, and sometimes it's important to understand how much disruption you should put in your deck. Lots of times I see people like start off every blue deck with like counterspell, mana leak, spell snare, like the next 3 counterspells, and they're like, all right, well, I'm playing blue, so I'm playing at least these 6 counterspells. You don't always want those 6 counterspells in your deck. Sometimes it's just not what you're looking to do, especially if you have a very strong proactive game plan. Sometimes incidental disruption is all you need, and to quote a very famous football coach, sometimes the best defense is a good offense.
So I want to talk about that. So we're talking about how great disruption is. So is the lesson here to cram as much disruption into a deck as possible? Make yourself a great little fort of like thorns and counterspells and hand attack, and no one can get in.
That's another thing that people fall into that is going to cause them to just lose, because if you spend your entire game or your deck building process caring about what your opponent's doing, there's no self-care. There's no emphasis on you as a person or as a player. Like, where, you need to cast a Nisamaru too.
Well, and also if you think you're gonna 1-for-1, because lots of times, especially once you start going whole hog into
Myers
disruption,
tool,
it's gonna be 1-for-1, and you're not gonna be able to 1-for-1 your opponent out in this format. There's way too much value.
Serge,
Yo,
do you know what Mono Red's disruption is?
what?
Kill him.
It also has the highest density of removal spells in the format.
And, well, I mean, Red also, just modern day Red has, it's like...
Yeah, Harsh Mentor, Eidolon.
Yeah, Jesus, don't tell me Mono Red doesn't have disruption.
I hate.
But it's all
Eidolon.
proactive, right? It all, again, like Jer said, it has the highest density of removal spells, be it opponent removal or creature removal. Because
it's variable.
Everything just doubles, right? You look at every shock, every lightning bolt, and you think, oh, I can kill a creature with this, or I can put it towards killing a creature.
I can kill a planeswalker. I
yeah.
can kill an opponent. I could kill myself.
I can kill everything.
Aside from cards like Price of Progress or Flame Rift that are purely dealing damage to the opponent, but realistically, that is also a form of disruption. Like,
I mean, you're disrupting your opponent's game plan if they're on a clock.
Yeah, you effectively warp like this predetermined sit down when 2 players start a match, and in their head they're kind of forming, like, as soon as it's revealed what they're playing, or if there's this like unspoken agreement that Magic seems to have across every format, where it's a turn X format or it's a turn this format, where if you then accelerate that via Goblin Guide, that can be disruptive enough to their game plan that they have to abandon whatever it is they're doing and care about what you are doing.
Imagine if your opponent started hitting your chess clock. You're just like,
Okay, now my turn.
it's like you take 2 turns. It's like, wait, what?
They'd be hitting it with like an oversized cartoon mallet, though, right?
Or
Or like,
or just
have to be
they take it and put it under the
squeaky of
table.
some
yeah,
sort.
or like one of those like boxing gloves on like a.
Oh yeah, the
You like squeeze down on it, and this boxing
glove
glove
comes out?
extends.
Boink.
Yeah. You're not familiar?
I'm
When's
familiar.
the last time you watched a cartoon from the 1940s?
Probably the 1940s.
Wait,
How old are you? Hey, that's my shtick.
I want to circle back to what Jared's talking about, which is the best defense is a good offense. And what do you mean when you're saying that in the conversation of disruption?
just that some decks are so proactive and so good at what they do that you don't need to add in any disruption just for the sake of having disruption, because it's taking away from your proactive game plan, and you're actually slowing down your clock and losing percentage points by adding in these cards that don't fit with your game plan and don't help you win the game.
This is a big discussion piece every time we bring up Rakdos aggro, because as we've said before, like when people build Rakdos, the first things that they look to are like, okay, what is black bringing to the table for this? And they like slam in, I've seen this time and time again, they slam in Fatal Push, Thoughtseize, Inquisition, Duress. And none of these cards deal damage, or none of these cards effectively solve what their better situated red counterparts are going to solve. So it's much like what Jer was saying, is that if you find yourself adding these disruptive elements to a deck that can't capitalize on that style of disruption, then you're just going to lose. You're just going to fall behind.
I love the example we used to give of Pat Pod not playing any removal spells. And didn't we have a powerful Magic story where, was it you, Wheeler, who just got by a Swords to Plowshare or something like that?
Yep.
Yeah, because the deck had in our local metagame had been so tweaked to rely on its creatures for removal or just a clock that you're like, I don't have to play around the spell. And you're like, oh, I just got sent to the Shadow Realm.
Yep.
I mean, I'm going to be
Definitely
talking...
did.
Sure did.
I'll be talking about this in my deck tech, but I went a similar route with Black Mold because I have cut almost all of the hand attack. Which sounds weird because it's like, oh, it's a black-green aggressive deck. You can play hand attack. It's like, or I could play Tyrant's Choice and murder them to death.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that pans out, but I have high hopes.
Just kill him.
It's my disruptions kill him.
So let's talk about the metagame then. We kind of hinted on this. What do you think the best disruptive decks are?
Death and Taxes.
Death and Taxes.
Wow.
Medium,
Not close.
medium red,
Yeah?
that kind of
Up
stuff.
there.
Again,
Green, white.
the best ones are going to be the ones that can capitalize on proactive disruptive threats and proactive disruption as a whole. If you are, I mean, you can even put, it seems weird, but like Storm can be up there too, depending on what build that you are playing it. A lot of people don't really catch on to how much disruption that style of deck plays, where you have you'll have a full suite of hand attack, you'll have silences, you'll have bounce spells, removal. You'll get up to like over 20 pieces of disruption in some of the more traditional 4-color storm shells. And the thing that all these have in common is they're not playing cards like Force of Vigor, or they're not playing purely reactive disruption. They're playing...
What's Force of Vigor, just as an example?
So
here?
Force of Vigor is a card from Modern Horizons. It's 2 green instant that says, if it's not your turn, you may exile a green card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Destroy up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. It's something that was brought up a lot during the preview season, and even after that, about why hasn't this card seen a lot of play. And because, again, it's purely reactive. You can say it's a bit proactive in the sense of, I'm just going to play whatever, I'm going to blow up whatever you have, but it doesn't progress your game plan. It serves to only blow up what's in front of you, and that's not going to get you match points. Collector Oof is going to get you match points. Thalia is going to get you match points. So again, the best decks that are popping up in the format that are heavy on disruption and pack the most disruption are the ones that are also turning creatures sideways, sacrificing Blood Pet, the finer things in life.
I'm surprised the example of like best disruptive deck in the format isn't something like Blue Moon, which has counterspells, has mana disruption, and has removal to kill all your creatures. Like, shouldn't you think of a control deck when you think of a disruptive deck?
I mean, by definition, they are mostly, if not always, disruptive because they're effectively looking to control the game and invalidate the decisions of your opponent.
Yeah.
But those also aren't the top performing versions of this deck, and they're also you kind of get this into the situation where, because of the nature of control decks being segmented into different card types that all have different functions, so be it cantrips, the disrupted planeswalkers, the planeswalkers that are looking to accrue card advantage or whatnot, the counterspells, removal, that is all very much targeted towards very specific things in the metagame. Control decks will famously run into issues where you draw all of your counterspells in a match where you don't need your counterspells.
Sure.
Yeah, your opponent played Goblin Guide.
Whereas the disruption from the other decks, the proactive decks, it doesn't, death doesn't discriminate. You're going to, like Athalia, even when Athalia isn't at her best, she is still going to provide some level of disruption as well as attacking, holding equipment.
We're talking about the power then again of the static disruption of...
Well, just more so proactive as opposed to reactive. Like, all the disruption, or almost all of the disruption in control decks is in the form of removal spells, counter spells, and very occasionally static. But it's almost always reactive. And if it's proactive, it's often something like Moat. It's not looking to win the game, it's just looking to, once again, just purely disrupt your opponent. Whereas the stuff out of medium red, Death and Taxes, green white, mid range, or Hate Bears is like, at least it has a bear attached to it. Like at least it's still gonna buff your opponent in the face a few times.
Like think about matches that you have against control decks when they have 4 open mana and they pass the turn, and then on your turn you think, oh my god, they have a counterspell. And then if they don't have a counterspell, I hope they don't have any kind of card draw. And so let's say for whatever reason you don't have anything and you pass. And then your control opponent doesn't have a counterspell because you haven't done anything that would cause them to react. They don't have a removal spell because, again, same issue of the first point. But then they also don't have a Fact or Fiction or a Gifts Ungiven or a Hieroglyphic Illumination. They don't have some way of accruing advantage.
So they give you the stink eye.
Sure. Well, they effectively
do nothing.
They don't. Yeah, they're not doing anything. They effectively have. Sure, they've survived one more turn, which is gaining them something.
Turn off.
But exactly. Whereas, so that disruption is just going to further sit, waiting for a situation which it is going to be relevant to react to, and then. What if you're a control deck in that situation and you have Lightning Bolt and Counterspell and they play Loxodon Smiter? Or one of many threats in the format or cards in the format that just don't care about counterspells or that type of very specific removal. Because you can always subvert the expectations of a control player by including your proactive cards or your threats to play around the agreed upon card selection or like toughness of importance in the format, if that makes sense.
It just cracks me up that the best disruptive decks in the format are all aggro decks.
Yeah. And that's another common misconception that people have, is that people think like Seinfeld is the best disruptive deck, and that's not even remotely true.
How are you going to lose? You have 50 counterspells.
The answer is very easily. Bonk, 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 bonk.
Oh my god, a Falconwrath Gorger. What the hell do I do now?
Yeah, the amount of times you just die to turn 1 Llanowar Elf, if your opponent knows the matchup, is very high. Like, if they literally just turn it sideways 20 times, you're likely to die. If
Holy
they start
moly.
tapping it for mana, you have a chance.
God forbid they have a treetop village to follow up.
Mutavault.
No.
Well, then let's talk quickly about what disruption works best in certain matchups. So let's talk again about control. So you're against a control deck. How are you? What are you trying to do to disrupt a control deck, and what kind of cards you want to use?
It's, again, to preface, a lot of this is very contextual. This
Sure.
is going to change based on what your deck's priorities are and what the individual control deck's priorities are, because they do shift from deck to deck to deck. But there are some constants. Control decks like to have mana. They hate having their mana attacked. Cards like Strip Mine, Wasteland,
Armageddon.
Rishadan Port.
Rishadan Port.
Sinkhole.
A
Sinkhole,
simple
nice.
ways of blowing up their mana base, and ideally paired with repeatable, being able to do so repeatedly. So Rishadan Port, Renin 6,
Orcish Settlers.
this,
Ooh.
like Life from the Loam, stuff like that.
yeah.
Alternatively, if you're not attacking their mana,
that's not the
attack
one,
the zone.
What's the other one? The repeatable one.
Dwarven Miner
Yeah,
and
that.
Yeah.
Dwarven Blast Miner.
Let's just slide in Dust Bowl here.
Yeah, well, yes. But these are cards that you, like, get to attack one of their most important resources, their lands, so that they can cast their spells appropriately in response to whatever you're doing. And then also hand attack. Hand attack is big. Because often your hand attack is going to be 1 mana, maybe 2 mana. And you'll get to points where their reliance on countering your spells or resolving very key cards is going to be up on, like, you're going to be trading up with that. They're going to be 3 mana counter spells, or they need to protect multiple things, or you're clearing a way to cast your thing and their information.
Even if you're just scouting, right?
And often one of the most important things in control decks is not to draw the wrong half of your deck in the wrong matchup. And you often do that by cantripping and trying to find the key cards. And if you're able to take, like, a Wrath of God against a creature deck, or a Planeswalker against a mid-range deck, that can often be enough to win you the game, just like dissecting their hand at the right time.
Well, let's flip it over. How are you beating the aggro deck? How are you beating these low to the ground fast decks?
Often removal. You don't want counter spells.
You can beat these decks?
My God, I hope so, or else we'd have a pretty boring metagame.
Yeah, removal. You kill the creature, or you stop yourself from dying so that their taxation doesn't matter. It's a bit more difficult and nuanced to do that, but even decks like the combo decks can manage that, be it an Academy-based combo or a Dark Ritual-based combo deck. If you don't have a lot of creature removal on your end, you have to then plot out play lines that either disrupt their progression enough or build up enough mana or resources on your end so that their limitations don't actually matter.
It's no longer
Yeah.
symmetrical.
The combo decks are often on best defense, good offense plan versus aggro.
Yeah.
I like that. Well,
Like,
even
they're like, I'm probably not going to be disrupted that much. Like, aggro decks often don't have much in the way of counter spells / hand attack, which are the most debilitating to combo decks.
And it's funny because it changes from threat to threat as well and deck to deck. Like, the scariest part about a Lodestone Golem, if I'm on Storm, or I'm not even going to mention eggs because that's just laughable.
Yeah.
But if I'm on Storm or Garbage Platter and my opponent has a Lodestone, what I'm most worried about is 5 power.
yeah.
Because, oh my god, this is going to untap and attack my life points directly. And that sucks.
Just like the show.
Just like the movie that's based off the show, that's based off the manga. Anyways.
I love the high level idea that the biggest disruption you can do to an aggro deck is to disrupt their clock. And you can even think of life gain as a way that wrecks their clock. If they're hoping that you're dead on turn 5, if all of a sudden you've changed the math such that you live an extra turn.
Yeah, Kitchen Fink's famous least favorite card of aggro decks everywhere.
You can manipulate that. Like, again, you can take what their expectations are for how fast their deck is and then add extra turns to it. But these decks are also just very good at acknowledging that that will happen and preparing themselves with the tools to deal with that, as well as just not caring as much. Like, cards like Thragtusk are less impactful in 2019 than they were in, like, 2013.
Well, I mean, you have a high level sort of like back and forth because it's like, I want to play, Thragtusk. It's like, well, enjoy this Sulfuric Vortex. I don't care.
Yeah, or just being like, God, I hate Rampaging Ferocidon. I just want to get that out right now.
That card's
Cards slowly becoming one of my least, like, it's probably my third least favorite card.
What are
of
the
all
other
time.
two?
I want to know. Yeah,
What
I
are
need
the
to-
other two?
Idiot Bird. It's got to be up there.
Idiot
Time
Bird's
Vault.
number one. Time Vault is.
Time Vault might be number one.
I just hate Time Vault's in its own like little galaxy over there.
All right, all right.
It's on Mars,
pain.
but number two is still Gaddock Teague. Easy, still Gaddock Teague. Yep.
Rampaging Ferocidon, Gaddock Teague, and Idiot Bird.
Yep.
Is it just because of who beat you with Gaddock Teague?
No, it's just
You
like
just hate Spencer.
no. I mean, well, just
I
think
wasn't
of
gonna
all
say it.
the cool things at 4 mana or that have X in their mana cost to try and find things to deal with this stupid Kithkin.
So you're like,
What's the matter? Can't you deal with two toughness?
I like the idea. There's like, I came down to play Magic, and Gaddock Teague is just like, no.
Well, at least Academy decks are like somewhat better off than they used to be against Teague.
Yeah, I mean, laughs,
was a time
laughs
when-
and walking ballista, right?
Yeah, there was a time when you played Gaddock Teague against Academy deck, and they literally were on 0 outs
Just
to
like-
cast a relevant spell for the rest of the game.
Well, I can't
Really?
can't
Yep.
repeal this,
The only thing they had under 4 was Mana Rocks.
but now Teague is like, this, your tyranny ends here, Talarian Mage, and it's just like, oh, Golos, and you just crush the Teague with one hand. Like, it doesn't matter as much anymore, but card is
Golos.
still the worst.
All right, let's real quick. What's the best way to disrupt combo? We talked about control. We talked about aggro. I mean, obviously, there's more archetypes than that, but high level.
Clock plus other things.
Yeah.
The other things can be basically anything. It can be counter spells. It can be, your Thalias, your Idiot Birds. It can be your hand attack. But
The most
but,
important is
like,
pressure.
Crush
the
their head.
single most important, like, still to this day, I still see people like, should I tap out on turn 2 for a threat or hold up this counter spell? I'll hold up the counter spell in case I'm dead. Like, well, are you going to hold that up for the rest of the game? And then they tap out on turn 4 instead, and then they die.
Yeah, even if I'm a combo deck, if for whatever reason I all of a sudden just have this emblem that says your opponent gets like Rishadan ported twice in their like turn, or they can't use this mana during their main phase or whatever, I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty good. I'm just gonna keep tutoring until I get to this point where I'm like, Orm's Chant, all right, duress you, okay, you're dead. You need pressure is the most important thing. That's why it's, I mean, this probably isn't even true. I just thought about this, but I said that I was going to say that's why it's pressure plus disruption, not disruption plus pressure.
Don't give the other wizard enough time to set up their magic trick.
Yep, basically.
Because they're gonna come out with a flourish and like show the box and show that
And also,
put you in, saw you, and then you actually.
It's
die.
not an anime battle. If I'm standing there, like, summoning my power and channeling everything, you don't have to sit there and watch. You can come over and kick me in the groin for all I care. I mean, don't do that. But
I will.
But yeah,
Yeah.
you need that pressure. You need to put a clock on me, or else I don't care. It's why people have this impression that their blue decks are going to win out versus combo, like Eggs, Paradox, or
just stop your
Storm.
thing.
They're just like, I'll just counter everything that's relevant and then resolve a 6-drop. And it's just like,
Nope.
nope. I'm just going to get to a point where I have a higher density of relevant cards than you, because all the cards in my deck matter. But in your deck, your lightning bolts suck. Your magnetic sinkhole doesn't do anything. It's
nice
just,
flame slash.
yeah.
Idiot. All right. Any closing thoughts on disruption? If you had one final thing that you'd want to tell the viewers at home about disruption. I mean, we covered a lot, so you don't have to say anything. But if you have any final thoughts you wanted to add.
I really want to stress proactive versus, or just like purely proactive when it comes to when it comes to disruption effects that are very particular. So again, the Force of Vigor, Night of Autumn,
Force of Vigor Collector Roof's almost better. Because
Yeah,
Night of Autumn's just like so versatile,
Yeah.
it's always good.
Yeah.
Whereas
So-
Collector Roof, there's a bunch of matchups where it's not going to do anything. Like its ability isn't going to be relevant, but it's still a 2/2.
Or Rex Sage, right? Like you can even, because people have been cutting Reclamation Sage from their decks that have now Night of Autumn, Decay, Assassin's Trophy, whatever it may be,
Thrashy
B.
Thrashy B.
But like often just like doubling up on this kind of effect is going to be fine because they're just still creatures.
Yeah.
So moving forward when it comes to your own individual card evaluation, especially when preview season rolls around for a new set, if you like spend more time trying to focus on creatures or planeswalkers that have more disruptive elements than just the one-off naturalize effects or whatever. it
For
may be.
anybody who may be having difficulty with the concepts of like proactive versus reactive, maybe you could call it question and answer.
Yeah. That's a
Sure.
good
It's
way
just
to-
like the question is like, how are you gonna not die? And the answer is like this.
I like it. All right. Well, with that, then let us move to our closing segment. Powerful magic. Up today, Wheeler. Tell us a tale.
This might be one of my favorite magic related things that has happened to me recently
Go on.
because I'm still recovering.
All right.
So one of the things that I do through my stream is that people will submit archetypes or deck lists and ask for them to be worked on. And one that has popped up is a white-red Stuffy Doll Wildfire deck. So for those not familiar
Yeah.
with Stuffy Doll and the cards that get paired with it,
Oh, Stuffy Doll's so cool.
Stuffy Doll is a 5-mana artifact creature that's a 0/1
Yep.
that has indestructible. And as it comes into play, you choose a player. And all damage that would be dealt to Stuffy Doll is also dealt to that player. And then you can also tap Stuffy Doll to deal 1 damage to itself.
To itself.
Yep.
That's the best part.
There
Tap to do-
are, I think, 11 variations of this effect. And there are a couple of red cards that can do a buttload of damage.
Blasphemous Act.
Blasphemous Act's a big one. Wildfires are popular inclusions.
Star of Extinction, does that deal damage to everything?
It does, Serge. It deals 20 damage to everything.
Have you played earthquake effects in it?
Yes. Earthquake and Rolling Earthquake.
All right.
The point is, the deck does a lot of damage to everything, but your things also just kill your opponent when you do it.
Okay.
The deck is shockingly reasonable.
What?
It seems like it's just some stupid meme, but wildfires are good. Dealing a bunch of damage to your opponent and wrathing their board is also good. So I found myself in a match against Death and Taxes, where we're in game 3, and this was one hell of a match. I get my mana disrupted, my Mox Diamond continues to do nothing, but my opponent sticks like an Auriok champion, so while the beats are rather anemic, it's just 1 every turn, I can't kill this Auriok champion
Okay.
in my deck. I don't believe I have a way to do so. We get into this grindy, what felt like an hour-long game. Oh my. We get into this grindy game where I'm slowly rebuilding, but I'm getting
One
hit
every
by a
turn.
Rishadan
Yeah.
port. There's the 3-mana Thalia, I think, is in play. There's definitely an Idiot Bird. But thankfully, and they have a Mother of Runes. And so, but I'm able to establish a Soulfire Grandmaster, one of my favorite cards of all time.
Oh, I
which
see.
is 1 and a white for a 2/2 lifelink. Instants and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, and then you pay 2 and then hybrid Izzet mana. The next time you cast an instant or sorcery from your hand this turn, put that card into your hand instead of your graveyard as it resolves. So I slowly, and I get down to like 1 life. And I slowly creep back with Soulfire and like, I'll Arc Trail this, and like 1 gets Mother of Runes, but that's fine. And then I like finally kill this Thalia so I can start playing Imperial Recruiter effects to find my Stuffy doll. And I slowly creep back up. And it gets to a point where my life total is enormous. Because somewhere along the line, I get a Blasphemous Act, which deals 13 damage to each creature, and this gives it all lifelink. And there's like a lightning helix involved, so I'm gaining 6 every time.
Oh
It's
my god.
great.
Oh my god.
All the while, my opponent is starting to accrue some massive, like, I'm worried about Armageddons. They're accruing massive amounts of creatures and card advantage post Blasphemous Act, and I'm somewhat running out. I have one Planeswalker in play, but it's been Phyrexian Revokered, and then I have to play another one, but what I'm trying to get to is I find a Nahiri the Harbinger, and I have a Stuffy doll in play. And so Nahiri the Harbinger is 2, a white and a red for a Planeswalker. Comes into play with 4 loyalty. +2, you may discard a card if you do draw a card. -2, exile target enchantment, tapped artifact, or tapped creature. And most importantly, -8, search your library for an artifact or creature card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. It gains haste, return that card to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. I get this Nahiri ticked up. I'm going to minus this Nahiri next turn. I have the Stuffy doll in play. My opponent has no cards in hand at this point. The coast is clear.
Oh boy.
Now, 2 things are very relevant to the final part of this story. 1, I had just ordered a pizza for my husband as a celebration for finishing school. And 2, last minute, I needed one more card, and I said, I don't know, should I just put Flametongue Kavu in here? Like a creature that can dome something of theirs or something on my end. And somebody said, and Beej, I'm going to ask that you don't look it up until the very end of this, a card called Volcano Hellion, which to my knowledge was just a creature that I choose an amount of damage and it deals it to some creature, and then I pay, it has Echo. It's like a red 4-drop that domes something for a lot, and then you have to pay the Echo or you lose it.
Okay, I've
And I
never
was
heard of
like,
this card.
I had heard of it. I had not really looked at it. I'm like, okay, this is fine. So, and you select the amount of damage you do.
Okay.
So I'm about to win this match because I ultimate my Nahiri. I select this Volcano Hellion. I hear knock, knock, knock. The pizza's at the door. I start clicking up my Volcano Hellion to as much damage as I can, and I'm like, oh, just a second. I'm like, folks, I can't believe we won. We're living the dream. Now, Beej, if you could pull up Volcano Hellion.
Oh no.
Because I select 200. I select 200, click OK. I get up out my chair. I go, woo! I walk away and grab this pizza. 2 minutes later, I return to find that I have lost the goddamn match because Volcano Hellion says 2 red, 6/5. Volcano Hellion has Echo X, where X is your life total. When Volcano Hellion comes into play, it deals an amount of damage of your choice to you and target creature. That damage can't be prevented. I didn't know I was going to dome myself for 200, and I walked away like a goddamn idiot. Come back, and I'm like, what? What happened? Huh? So read the card, folks, and don't listen to Twitch chat. If I can give 2 lessons, it's that.
Ever
Oh my
listen
god.
to Twitch chat.
Oh my god. Amazing. Woo! All right. Well, that's our episode today. So, a little bit of housekeeping. 1, Magic Fest Vegas is coming up. August 22nd, something like that. Whole bunch of us from Loading Ready Run are going to be down there. Wheeler's going to be there as well.
Oh, hell yeah.
Jerry, are you going to be there?
Negative.
But regardless, come play Magic with us in Vegas. It's going to be absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to see you there. Afterwards, there's also going to be PAX West, but we'll hype that some more later. Also to remind you that now we do YouTube memberships as another way that you can support the channel if you're interested in it. Either way, regardless of how you choose to support us, thank you so much. And a reminder as well that this episode is brought to you by your support at the Patreon over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Thank you so much. The next Friday Night Paper Fight Summer League starts on August 9th, and we'll see you then. Cheers.